turn up video just to help with bandwidth once the meeting gets going for myself.
I did start the recording.
Okay.
Do you want to go ahead and get started, or do you want to wait a few more minutes?
Let's wait one more minute.
Okay.
Did anyone, Rihanna, did you get the link through the mail and try it? I was just wondering if the link worked that we sent.
Gina, are you talking to me, Rihanna?
Yeah, I was wondering.
Okay, sorry. I got the flyer and I lost it, so I contacted Carrie Palmer and sent me an email this afternoon that had the link, and then it had the phone number if I wanted to use my phone.
Okay.
So I just clicked the link and got right in.
Okay. I just want to make sure that it worked.
Because we won't know unless somebody.
We have a few: Stuart Chase, Teresa Edens, Carla. We have a few folks on here.
Okay.
That might be residents, so I think people are able to access it.
Certainly. Well, it is now 1 minute after 6, and I do want to start on time because I know we're all, taking some time out of our day to get this meeting going. So let's start. So I'm going to introduce myself. I'm going to introduce city staff. And my name is Mario Vasquez. I am a project manager with the Public Works Department. I'm actually going to have city staff introduce themselves. So if you would, Maggie.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Maggie Green, the Public Information Officer with KCMO Public Works. Excited to be here this evening to talk about these two great projects and have a good discussion with you all.
Mr. Shaw, if you could.
Good evening. I'm Michael Shaw. I'm the Director of Public Works.
Chad Thompson from Public Works has just joined. So if you don't mind introducing yourself, Chad.
Chad Thompson, Assistant City Engineer.
I'm not seeing any other city staff, but if there are any out there, please go ahead and introduce yourselves.
And Mario, we do have Councilwoman Park Shaw who joined us if you want to have.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Councilman Park Shaw, please, good evening. Please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Did we lose her?
I think we might have. Well, I'll definitely say, this project is on the radar of several people at City Hall, and so I'm sure that we'll get a lot more attention as we go forward. So, really briefly, I'll just explain what the project's about, and this meeting is really about two projects. About a study of the Bannister Road corridor, which starts at 435 and goes to 350, and also a design process for Blue Ridge Boulevard from 87th Street to Bannister Road. So a lot of the stakeholders in the corridor are pretty, the corridors intersect, so there's a lot of stakeholders that have a similar interest. So for this initial meeting, we wanted to have a joint meeting for both projects, which is really a big area, and begin the process of soliciting and gathering public input into the projects. I think as was somebody asked earlier about when the project started and how they were funded, these projects have been in our to-do list for a little over 2 years now, and last year, right about when we were about ready to get started, we hit the pandemic, and we had to hit the brakes and rethink about how we conduct a public meetings and things of that nature. So, tonight is the start of the project and the start of the public input process. and also an opportunity for residents to know the teams that are engaged and the staff that are engaged, so that we can come up at the end of the day. We can come up with the products that we need out of these two projects. So, Maggie, you want to go next slide?
Sure. And I do see Councilwoman Parkshaw, I think, has rejoined us. Just wanted to welcome you and offer if you wanted to say anything before we kick off.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. Yeah, having technical difficulties here at City Hall, but good evening, everyone. Councilwoman Parkshaw, and I'm excited to hear about what's been going on. So thank you so much to the Public Works team, and look forward to the dialogue.
Awesome. Okay. So Mario, before you dive into project details, I do want to cover a couple housekeeping items on how we're dealing with this virtual world of virtual meetings. So if you would stay muted unless you're called on to speak, here in a little while we'll do a couple of facilitated Q&A and comment sessions. And so when we get to that part, you can use the little raise hand function, and we'll remind folks where that is. And then we'll call on people to offer their comment or ask their question and unmute at that time. We did start to record the meeting, so we will be, the recording will be available and posted on both project websites after the meeting. It usually takes us a few days to get that uploaded and ready to go, but if there are folks or neighbors that weren't able to join tonight but that are interested in these projects, that the recorded meeting will be available on the project websites. There are a couple ways to engage in the meeting this evening. Of course, the facilitated question answer session. There's also a chat box right here in the top banner of Microsoft Teams, little arrow here. It looks like a little text box bubble. That is the chat box, and a way that you can engage with us, ask questions, offer comments. If something is weird with the meeting or audio or something like that, please let us know. We do have the team monitoring the chat throughout the meeting. Our meeting is 2 hours. We should have plenty of time to have a great discussion this evening. But if for some reason we can't get to your comment or question, or you think of something after the fact, please do get a hold of Mario or myself, and we can help provide you with more information or make sure the project team documents your comment or idea after this evening. All right, Mario, so kicking it back over to you to walk through the agenda for this evening.
I have to unmute myself. Yeah, thank you, Maggie. So we've been covering a lot of the introduction overview already about the meeting. But the first, about the first hour or so, we're going to spend talking about Blue Ridge Boulevard, and then the design team involved in that project will show us the various tools that have been developed to give people the ability to provide feedback and input into the project. And we'll try to do some of that, here and live as well. But in reality, we're going to have the ability to provide feedback into the project for the next month or so. The next half of the meeting is really going to focus on Bannister Road, and Bannister is a long corridor. It's 7 miles, and it varies in character. Some of it is similar to Blue Ridge, some of it is not, and so we'll spend time talking about the entire length of the corridor again for about an hour or so. We'll show you some tools that have been developed to provide some of the feedback into the projects. There'll be time for questions and answers. And at the end of the meeting, we'll just wrap it up and go forward with our next steps in the process. Next slide, please. So just again briefly, high level overview of the projects. Again, I'm going to start with the Blue Ridge Corridor project, and this is a design contract, which means at the conclusion of this process, what we expect to have is a set of construction documents that will lead us to the implementation of improvements along Blue Ridge Boulevard from Bannister to 87th Street. I do want to say that we don't have construction funded, but however, we want to use this process and the public engagement process as a way to get the project shovel ready, so to speak, so that when funding becomes available, whenever it does, we have something that is ready to be implemented and without any further additional design exercises or anything of that nature. And we can do this on Blue Ridge Boulevard because the corridor is about a mile long. It's a relatively short corridor, but still, we can get into a lot of detail with this project. The Bannister corridor project is more of a study. It is a study that the primary objective of it is to identify some medium-term and long-term priorities for the corridor. And again, it's a long corridor. It's 7 miles long. It is a way for us to prioritize things that need to get done. We will not be able to come up with the same kind of end product that we have for Blue Ridge because practically the funding is not there. But what it will do is it will give us a place for begin to identify things that need to get worked on, over the next, however long it will take to complete. I don't have any preconceived notions about how long it takes, but I do know that 7 miles is a pretty long corridor, so it will take years to get that project implemented. But this is the starting point for us to have a to-do list, so to speak, for the future. So the project, what we're going to do tonight, as I said before, is starting the process of gathering information from you about both of these corridors. We want to get your feedback. We'll show you some facts, and primarily we're going to listen and begin to gather questions and begin to get from you the areas of emphasis that we need to look into and gather information for you so that we can incorporate those issues into the design of Blue Ridge Boulevard or into recommendations into Bannister corridor. So next slide, please. Just again, a little bit on the roles on the project. As I said before, I'm Mario Vasquez. I'm the project manager. I'm basically managing, working with Tim Burfind from SK Design, who is the project manager for the Blue Ridge Streetscape project, and also working with Dave Menenga with Bannister, with GBA on the Bannister Road study, and of course Maggie Green is Public Information Officer for the Public Works Department, and she is what amounts to my right hand on a lot of projects that we work on, because there is such a desire to have public involvement and such a need to have public involvement and public input into the projects. Next slide, please. Again, this kind of gives you an idea of our task. North and south is and highlighted in orange is Blue Ridge Boulevard, and then east and west, again also highlighted in orange, is Bannister Road to 435 and 350. So both of the teams we're gonna be working with on these projects have already begun to gather some data. And so what I want to do next, I'm going to pause you for a minute and see if there's any questions from anybody. All right, I'm not seeing any questions.
Excuse me, this is Councilwoman. I actually would just like to ask, I'm not real familiar with how Teams works, if we can tell, but I would just like to ask so I can see who's on this call. For those who are representing different neighborhoods, if you could either give me a thumbs up or wave your hand or something. Does anybody who has more experience with this, or are they able to do that? So it looks like we have about 16 people joining us, and I'm really just trying to figure out how much of the neighborhoods are represented here. So it looks like 3. So 5 people. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I think it might be a good idea, Councilwoman, to just have them type in the chat their name and who they represent for the record.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Great suggestion.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that suggestion. Yeah, for sure. I mean, there is, like as I mentioned before, there's a lot of overlap in these corridors, especially at the organizational level. But also, I also know there are differences. So at least for today, we're going to try to get everybody involved in one meeting, and then going forward, we'll probably split into separate meetings for the two projects. Very good. I think it looks like we have about, yeah. So what I want to do next is I want to turn the meeting over to SK Design Group and Tim Burfine to go over the information that we currently have available about these projects on our city's website. And then we'll also go over a new tool that we've developed to allow residents to submit input about the corridor to the design team and to the city and to city staff working on this project. So Tim, go ahead, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mario. My name is Tim Burfine. I'm a civil engineer, and I'm with SK Design Group. And we've been hired by the city of Kansas City to work on the Blue Ridge Boulevard project. And I'd just like to start off by saying that we're very excited about working on this project. We've put together a great team of engineers, architects, and public information officers to help us. And we want to improve the boulevard, and we are here to listen tonight. My goal for the project is to kind of walk through the project from north to south, just to give everybody an idea of what the boundaries of the project will be. And then we want to talk about some of the tools that we put together to get input from you. We have some really great tools. I'm going to turn it over to Gina, who is also on our team. And then once we've kind of gone over the corridor and showed you what tools are available for feedback, then we're really here to listen. And we want to hear what issues you have with Blue Ridge Boulevard, any challenges that you can see, and then find out what ideas you have for improvements. How can we make the boulevard better? So what you see up on screen right now is some information generally about the project, and there's a website on the city webpage for Blue Ridge Boulevard, and this is some of the information that's on that website. And the limits of the project are from Bannister Road to 87th, and we also have a site with a link off of the city website that Gina will be showing you shortly, and that's where we have some really great tools and ways for you to give us feedback on the project. So I'd like to just start off by kind of walking through the corridor, through the boulevard, and talking about some of the things that I've noticed, and just showing you what our limits are for the project. Okay, so this is a aerial photograph that we have of the project, and just to get everybody oriented, north is to the right on this. So 87th Street is on the right side of this plan. You can see a traffic signal there to give everybody an idea, and then Blue Ridge is obviously the road that kind of curves off to the left here. And so we'll start at the north end here and then walk our way to the south through a series of 3 slides. And the first part of the boulevard is a very commercial area. There's a lot of retail in this area. There's many businesses in this area. There's a few businesses that are no longer operating. There's some empty storefronts in this area. We have several banks in the area. There's a church in here. We also have Swope Health Services. And the roadway in this area is a 4-lane roadway with a center turn lane. And so if you're coming down Blue Ridge Boulevard and you want to go to one of the businesses on either side, the east or west side, you can get into that turn lane and then turn in to go to one of the businesses. As we go south along Blue Ridge, eventually the center turn lane ends, and we get into more of just a 4-lane section. And I just want to point out a couple of the pictures here in the kind of upper right portion of the screen right now. You can see that there is obviously the pavement needs a little bit of help in Blue Ridge Boulevard. And I drove it this morning, and there's certainly some potholes along the way. There's some water that's pooling out there. It was raining this morning. So that's one thing that I think we definitely need to give some attention, is just a good repaving of the surface, get some of those imperfections out of the way that need some attention. Down in the lower left-hand corner, there's a picture there, and this is kind of where we transition from the commercial area into the residential area. And as I'm driving Blue Ridge Boulevard, this is the area that really makes me think of, this is the vision of what a boulevard is in Kansas City. You have large street trees along both sides of the boulevard through this area. You have a nice sidewalk on one side that's offset from the road. You have residential neighborhoods. You have Loma Vista on one side and some single-family homes on the other side. And there's a nice curvature through this area. So this is what my vision is of what a boulevard really looks like in Kansas City. I think this is a great part of the corridor that we're studying, and I think the street trees and just the drive through there is really fantastic. So next slide kind of takes us through this area that we're talking about, this tree-lined area that goes through the residential zone. If you can go to the next slide, Maggie. Okay, great. So this goes through the residential area, and as we go through here, the roadway turns to the west, and we go through an area where there's several churches in here. We have the New Vision Christian Church, Turning Point Church, and Greater Bethel Missionary Baptist Church, and there's also the Dwayne Harvey Funeral Home. So this kind of is also an area of transition. We have sidewalk on the east side of Blue Ridge Boulevard. Generally, there's not a sidewalk on the west side currently. The sidewalk is usually set back pretty well on the east side, and there is a small portion of sidewalk in front of Turning Point Church. But the trees that were kind of prominent in the Loma Vista area, they stick around on the east side, but on the west side, where we have those large lawns leading up to the churches, the trees are not filled in that area. I still think that this is a very stately portion of Blue Ridge Boulevard. You do have those long lawns leading back to the churches beyond. And then as we get up to Eastern, we start to transition back to that more commercial. We have the Mid-Continent Library that you can see. And if you go to the next slide, it's a little bit more prominent. Yeah, so there's a picture on the roadway. There's somebody actually on the sidewalk on the right side of this, right in front of the Mid-Continental Public Library. And that sidewalk, as you can tell, there is set back pretty well from the roadway. It's probably about 10 feet back. And then on the west side here, this is kind of, we're calling this rural residential on this slide, but this is kind of some of that older development where you have larger lots with residential homes on them. And whereas in the Loma Vista area, it was more kind of the real suburban small lot type development. And as we continue on and we get back into the orange highlighted area here, we get back to that 4-lane section with a center turn lane again. And this is, again, a very developed commercial area in this part of Blue Ridge. And one thing that we've noticed is where Old Santa Fe comes in, it's a little bit odd in there, just the geometry of how the roadway meets up with Blue Ridge. People that want to go northbound on Blue Ridge turn and come in at an angle, but if you want to go southbound on Blue Ridge, you continue running south on Old Santa Fe, and you kind of have to look behind you and merge in with the traffic on Blue Ridge. Speed limit on Blue Ridge throughout this entire segment is 40 miles an hour. This is definitely an arterial road, and there's a lot of traffic that is moving through the area not necessarily just local traffic. There's a lot of people that use this that go from different parts of the city. And as we get down to Bannister Road, there's another traffic signal here. And at the four corners there, we have Walgreens on one corner, CVS on the opposite corner, and then there's the two gas stations catty corner to those. So again, this is a very commercial area. There's a lot of businesses in here. There are a few businesses that are not operating anymore. There's some empty windows there. So we also have several churches in this area. Bread of Life, we have Church of God, Seventh-day Church, and also Dobbs Elementary School is another important point in there. Off of the project corridor, we also have Price Chopper that's set off from Blue Ridge to the south of Bannister. So this is a thriving corner. There's still a lot of businesses that are active here, but there is signs of some businesses not being able to keep their doors open and dark windows. So anything we can do to help that with this project, we certainly want to do. So that's just a little bit of an overview of the project area and some of the things that I've noticed being in the corridor. And with that, I want to turn it over to Gina so that she can walk you through the Social Pinpoint site and let you learn how you can give some feedback on the project.
I am Gina Boucher for Parson and Associates, and I am going to help you with public involvement tonight. I'm going to share my screen. Maggie, I'm not seeing my screen. Let's see.
Do you have the little?
Oh, okay. I think I have it now. Are you able to see it?
Yes, it's pretty tiny. I don't know if you can maximize the window.
Okay. How about that?
Yes.
That's a little bit better. Yeah.
Okay. Because I can't see you all. So let me I have to look over here. Okay, anyway, this past year, of course, we had to make some arrangements due to the limitations of gatherings, and we adopted an online community outreach platform called Social Pinpoint that we now use for all of our public meetings. And basically, this takes the place of the activities that you would normally do at your public meetings, like leaving comments, filling out surveys. If you've ever been to a public meeting where they give you a Post-it note and you write your comment and place it on a map, this is basically taking the place of that. And you'll see how that is in just a second. If you registered for tonight with your email address or signed in with your email address, you're going to get an email from me after the meeting, either tonight or tomorrow, with a link to this Blue Ridge site. If you don't know for sure if you registered with your email address, if you could put it in the chat room tonight, we'll go ahead and capture those and make sure that you get your link, personal email, so that you can get your link. When you do click on your link, you're going to come to this welcome screen. The screen tells a little bit about Blue Ridge, the project, talks about an add comment button that we're going to use to add comments on the map. It also talks about the green take the survey button on the left-hand side, which is over here. It tells you when the survey and the map are open, which is tonight until April 30th. And then down here, if you have any questions at all or comments, please contact Maggie, who's our facilitator tonight, and she'll be glad to either answer your question or get you an answer. Another thing, this is the link to the city's website. You can read all about it. And when you're ready, you press the button to get started. One thing I'll point out is this About icon has everything in it that I just talked about on the welcome screen. So if you forget something, you want to go to the city site and recheck something, it's all over here in the About comments. So here's your map of Blue Ridge. We added a few landmarks so you could be better acclimated. Over here is where you will, to the right, zoom in and zoom out. And if you're on a phone or tablet, you could just do it like you normally do with your fingers. One icon that I think is interesting and that you might want to use is this layers icon. So you can view the project in how it is now as roadmap, or you can change it to an aerial view, which better gives you, some more detail like we're used to with the Google Maps. But for tonight, we'll just go ahead and leave it on roadmap. So we talked about this add comment button. The green add comment button is up here. And when you click on that, you're going to get an option to add a comment by using any of these icons. And this is, like I said, the same as the Post-it note exercise that you might have done in other public meetings. The only difference is it's online and we've already separated the topics for you. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples on how to do this. I'm going to first pick the Other button, and then you just click on it, and then you're going to move your map around to get it where you want it. And since it's just a general comment, we don't care. So we'll just put it anywhere and we'll place our marker here. And I'm going to go ahead and add a comment. I'm going to say, I love this project and I live in Loma Vista. And then you will have to add your email address, at least the first comment that you make, and agree to terms if it's not already checked. And then you press add comment. And you can see that your comment is added here. And we'll do another one. This time we're going to talk about crosswalks and get a little bit more detailed. So we're going to move our map around and we're going to put that pinpoint right where we think the crosswalks would be. We know that pedestrians are dropped off and picked up on the bus. So we want to make sure that there's a crosswalk here. And I'm going to place the marker here. And I'm going to say that we need crosswalks for the bus riders. You can fill out any of this information too, and you can even add a picture, say you see a pothole or the uneven street that Tim was talking about. You can add a photo if you wanted to, but you don't have to. You do have to add your email again and agree to the terms if it's not checked, and then add your comment. And as you can see, your icon, your pinpoint showed up with your comment. Now, if you get in here later in the month, you might see a lot of pinpoints, and it can get pretty crowded. And if you see that maybe someone's already put a pinpoint where you wanted to and made a comment that you wanted to, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can just respond and say, you agree or disagree, or you think the crosswalk should be in another location. You can respond on this person's pinpoint. You can also like and dislike their comments, just like social media. Another way you can see what other people are saying is to go over to this activity icon, and you can just go down the line and read what everybody has to say and respond to them and like or dislike on social media. Okay. I want to go over the sidebar a little bit. The About button we talked about has everything on the welcome screen. definitions just gives you a little bit more clarity to what these icons mean. And it reminds you how to use the add comment button. One thing to remember though, is that you can't work from this area. It's just information. You have to go up to this add comment button to work. The most important icon on this side is the take the survey button. We want you to make sure you take the survey and don't leave the site until you take the survey. It's a really easy, short survey, has the basic multiple choice, choose as many as apply, or short answers. But there is a ranking type question. We have 3 of these, and I wanted to show you how that works. This sidewalks question says, please rank your sidewalk preferences from the most preferred to the least preferred by clicking and dragging each option to the move item box here. And basically, this is just how you do it. Move them all up there. And then you can rearrange them. Oh, I don't want no sidewalks to be my second choice. And in fact, I want 2 sidewalks, 1 on each side, to be my first choice. And that looks pretty good to me. When you get down to the bottom, you can just add general comments. Again, they want your email, agree to the terms, and don't forget to submit your survey so that we can collect that information. Okay, a couple of extras. Up here on the left-hand side, we'd love for you to share this site with your community, organization, or anybody that you know. And to do that, you can share it through social media, directly through email, or copy the link and you can text it, or add it to a document or whatever you'd like. If you or someone you know would rather take the test and feel more, or take the survey and the activity in a different language, if you feel more comfortable, you can have it all translated. It translates the survey and the map. And then another convenient option is that you can filter. So say you only wanted to see the comments that have to do with bike access. You can disable all these others and they start disappearing from this map. Or you can type in a specific comment, specific keyword, and remember that Loma Vista comment, it shows the icon that shows up in. And to clear it, you just press the X. So again, the survey and the map are open from tonight until April 30th. And you will get your email either tonight or tomorrow. Maggie's also going to share the link on the website, and we'll also send it out through social media, through city communications, and all of the other avenues that we sent it out before. And with that, I will go ahead and kick it back to Maggie for questions and comments.
This is Angela. I have a quick question. Gina, thanks so much for walking us through this. This looks really interactive. Super excited that there's still a way to have comment, even though we're now all virtual. What is the link for this? Can someone send it to me? I think it might be something our folks might want to see in our newsletter to help generate some more comments for you.
Oh, absolutely. We will send it to you, Angela, after the meeting for sure.
Awesome.
To your email address. Thank you.
That's perfect. Thank you so much.
And Gina, I might have jumped the gun, but I did put the Blue Ridge Boulevard project page that's on the KCMO website, as well as the social pinpoint link into the chat. So
that's fine. That's fine.
Okay, just so folks have direct access if you want to kind of pop in now and take a look. Also, so that it's on record with the meeting for the links, and we'll do the same for Bannister when we get to that point. So Gina, if you want to keep your screen up just in case we need to kind of navigate through the map here when we have the discussion, that would be great.
Sure.
So at this point, I do see a few folks' hands are still raised. I'm not sure if that was still raised because of when we asked the question at the beginning, or if you all have questions. So how this will work is I do see a few people's hand raised. That little icon is up at the top bar of Microsoft Teams. It looks like a little smiley face with a hand up like this. You click raise hand if you would like to offer a comment or ask a question. You can also type something into the chat. And basically what I will do is run down the list, and when it's your turn, you can unmute yourself and offer your comment or question. So it looks like we have Rihanna Dustlich is the first one up with their hand raised. And Rihanna, if you can unmute yourself, there you go.
I think that was from the question from the beginning when Gina asked me
Okay.
how, yeah, okay.
All right, I will lower your hand. All righty. Okay, Carrie P, looks like you have your hand raised if you want to unmute yourself and offer your comment or ask your question.
Well, I'm kind of wondering how we got to this stage. Our coalition, the Hickman United Neighborhoods, put in the initial PIAC request for a project. We put in sidewalks for west side of Blue Ridge Boulevard, and now we're talking about a streetscape. So I'm just kind of wondering how we got from sidewalks on one side of the street to a whole streetscape.
Carrie, this is Mario Vasquez, Public Works. As you know, and maybe as a good background for everybody on both projects, the projects were funded through District 5 PIAC, and the directive, I think, at the time from the council members was to go through this process, not necessarily just to look at a sidewalk, but look at a broader set of improvements for the corridor. So this is the direction that we were following as far as how we go forward with the project. It may very well be that long term or maybe in the near term, a sidewalk on the west side of Blue Ridge is identified as a priority, but there may be other things as well that need to be incorporated into that project. So the idea with this is to try to make as holistic as an improvement as possible, and really to just focus with and work with the neighborhoods to try to identify exactly what all, in addition to the sidewalk or anything else, might be needed for the corridor.
Okay, I understand that Bannister Road's a complex road. I understand that, but Blue Ridge Boulevard is in pretty decent shape. It just needs sidewalks on the west side of the street. We have several bus lines that go down that road. And again, we just asked for sidewalks on this road on the west side of the street. And it seems like we're doing a lot of extra stuff just to get sidewalks.
Like I said, there may be other things beyond sidewalks that other members of the community have identified, but I mean, for sure, we can immediately note the need of a sidewalk on the west side of Blue Ridge Boulevard as one of the key priorities for Blue Ridge.
And what is the timeline for the funding for this project after we go through this step? What is the timeline for this whole project?
It's a good question. So at this point, construction funding has not been identified, but I mentioned earlier in the meeting, the intent is to try to get us to the point where we can get things shovel ready, so that when a question comes up about what priorities are out there or what needs are out there in the community, we can bring this project up as an immediate priority. As you can probably realize, I mean, funding is very competitive throughout the city, and so the best thing that we can do, I think, to try to get things ready to go forward is to identify them and get them to a point where they can be immediately funded, especially if we've had a chance to work with the community.
Are you also working with the KCATA? Because I believe they want to take the Prospect Max bus down this route also.
We have not had a discussion with KCATA yet, but we will. So we will as well make a note of that as an outcome of tonight's meeting.
Thank you, Carrie. Anything else? We can always circle back to you too.
Maggie, there's also a comment in the chat.
Yes, and we have, let's see, I'm trying to do, someone else raised their hand as well. So if we want to do the comment really quick, and then Teresa, we see that your hand is raised as well.
Okay.
So the question is about the responsibility for the maintenance of private parking lots along Blue Ridge. I guess I would say those would have to be handled in a property maintenance type of situation. I'm not a property maintenance, property maintenance code expert, but to the extent that there might be a blighting influence or even, lack of repair of parking lots, I mean, those could be turned in as issues to be addressed through the proper maintenance code. But unfortunately, the city does not have the ability to to go into private property and make any improvements to to those parking lots. But we can, and this might sound, we can find some ways of, requiring screening or maybe implementing a screening ourselves so those aren't quite as an eyesore to the public as they currently are.
Okay, thank you. All right, Teresa, if you'd like to ask your question or offer your comment.
Yes, along the lines of what Carrie was saying, how much is this portion of this study costing, and where are the funds coming from?
The funds that were allocated to this study were $200,000 from in-district PIAC. And
Okay.
I said the year was 2018, fiscal year 2018, maybe 2019. I can't recall exactly.
Okay. And just in case you guys don't know, and I realize it's not in the study, but it was mentioned that there's a price chopper on the other corner, and that will no longer be there soon.
Yes, I am aware of that.
Okay.
We had invited Steve Rennie from the Economic Development Corporation to participate in the project, and see what other support Economic Development Corporation can continue to provide to the area as far as we begin to maybe see some vacancies and whatnot. I think, and again, I do want to emphasize that when the funds were provided, the vision, I think was maybe not clearly articulated, but was to sort of be comprehensive in how we look at the corridor and not just, really think about the little things or one thing that might need improvement. But then again, I also understand the need that, when you got to eat an elephant, you got to take it one bite at a time. So you got to take in as many bites as you can. But so we're trying to do both here to try to really take a broad look at the corridor and then really identify the things that need to get improved immediately.
And we do see two people that have joined by phone that won't have the ability to use the raise hand function. So just wanted to offer, if you're joining us by phone and wanted to chime in with a question or comment, wanted to give you that option really quickly. Okay.
Maggie, there was a follow-up question about the care of the parking lots and the question is if there is a way that there can be collaboration between property owners and the city to collectively improve the area. I mean, there are lots of ways that it can be done. It really begins to raise the level of complexity when it comes to implementing improvements. For example, a community improvement district could be created where, and there may have the 3 Trails CID used to be through here a while back, but that sort of pooling of resources is one way to begin to address comprehensively improvement within private property and in the public realm. But like I said, as you begin to deploy those kinds of tools, the level of complexity for being able to implement as improvement gets a little bit more difficult.
Thanks, Mario. So since we have a few more minutes here, I know Carrie brought up some good points about prioritizing sidewalk on the west side, as well as making sure, transit considerations are, included in the project. I just wanted to throw out a couple questions to maybe facilitate a discussion, since we don't have a huge group, and I think we could do that for a minute. Just curious if there's any other primary safety concerns along the corridor, anything that the team should really be looking at or making sure that we're including in our notes and possible improvements, if there's any safety concerns or traffic safety issues or other concerns that we should be aware of. Just wanted to throw out that question and see if anybody had any additional input. Okay. Does anybody have any other questions for the Blue Ridge team, or Blue Ridge team, do you have anything else to add before we transition to the next part of our presentation? Carrie, yes, go ahead, please.
I'm gonna go back to my initial point. I think we're making a mountain out of a molehill here. The neighborhoods asked for sidewalks on the west side of Blue Ridge. That was pretty much all we asked for. I don't know where this whole streetscape plan came from, why we're doing it this way, when there's literally only one thing the neighbors asked for. It just seems like we're doing a lot of extra stuff and spending a lot of extra money. I'd rather the money go for sidewalks rather than spending all this extra money on a streetscape that nobody asked for.
I think I can't really say much more other than to restate the response I gave before. The directive that staff received was to take this approach.
The directive did not come from the neighborhoods. The directive came from a council person. It didn't come from the neighborhoods.
Understood.
Thanks, Carrie. We will make sure that priority is loud and clearly articulated in our notes and moving forward. I do want to acknowledge John offered a couple of comments in the chat about sidewalks and if that is a consideration, putting them where there's space, some green space between them and the street for safety and inviting environment. Better buffering along the curbs. So thank you I just want to acknowledge the comments in the chat. We will make sure that all of these notes are incorporated in the project notes for folks that are typing comments into the chat.
So Maggie, this is Angela. I appreciate Carrie's comments. He makes a good point. Like, what are the current plans for sidewalks? I don't know what a streetscape is, but are there plans to incorporate sidewalks on this? Like, what are the plans there to address that concern?
Yeah, just generally when we look at a streetscape, we're looking at a comprehensive improvement of the public right of way. I mean, it can be very simple, like adding a sidewalk and street trees, or it could be more complex, modifying lighting, doing green infrastructure, doing some things of that nature. It really just depends on what are the needs of the corridor, maybe from a physical standpoint, and then what is desired by the neighborhood, and then what can be taken care of long term. It may be that we end up where we would look at, in not just sidewalks, but looking at crosswalk improvements, maybe looking at some traffic calming if there are issues with speeding, which I think in a 35-mile-an-hour corridor, there might be something that's an issue.
So how long did you say this corridor was?
I was thinking it's about a mile long. It might be a little bit longer than that.
And what are the current? I might have missed it in the beginning, so I apologize if I'm asking questions that already have been answered. But this current streetscape plan, what are the plans there? Then I know you said it's a comprehensive plan. So does this comprehensive plan include sidewalks?
Yes, for sure.
So the whole mile is going to get new sidewalks, or what exactly is getting new sidewalks?
We're going to evaluate. I mean, again, this is the first meeting for the project. First opportunity we're having with to meet with folks about the project. And this is our opportunity to begin to look at, what are the priorities for the people. Now, we walked corridors. Some of it has sidewalks already. And so some of those will either, be kept in place or be replaced depending on their condition. But we'll also look at the parts of the corridor that don't have any sidewalks and see what it takes to add sidewalks through there. There may be some engineering challenges. There may be some property, acquisition challenges. We don't know that yet, but for sure, we'll be looking at the entire corridor and the various elements of streetscape to see what needs to be added to the corridor.
Okay, so I'll be sure to follow up, I guess, when the public comment section is over to ensure that the sidewalks are incorporated. Carrie, I would recommend that you share with the other folks in your neighborhood association to also leave comments encouraging or suggesting or recommending that there be sidewalks included. But I'll be sure to follow up on that for you, Carrie. Thank you so much, Mario, for that insight.
Thanks, Angela. Teresa, it looks like you have your hand up again.
Yes, I do. If the directive came from the neighborhoods for sidewalks, because the neighborhoods are the people who know what the priorities are, then where did the directive for this study come from?
Again, restating what I said before, the funding was allocated for PIAC by PIAC through District 5, and the intent was to have a comprehensive evaluation of the corridor.
Whose intent was it to have the study?
I think the council members at the time.
So I will just jump in. This is Councilwoman Parkshaw. If this happened back in, it sounds like 2018, that would have been Councilwoman Kennedy and Councilman Barnes. And he is not able to join us tonight, but I will touch base with him and see what insight I can gain from him on this.
So can I continue?
Yes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, that's fine. What you said is fine, and somewhat helpful. But again, what the neighborhoods see as what they need is sidewalks. And I appreciate that will be included in this, but we don't know when that's going to be funded. So the sidewalks that the community, the neighborhoods want, we have no idea when they're going to get them because the money for them is now going to this study. Correct?
Correct. I think we need to get a little perspective on the cost of sidewalks as well. I mean, I think $200,000 would not go too far, very far on adding sidewalks. But I think the cost of this study can be leveraged into a much greater improvement and investment on the corridor that will include sidewalks. As we're looking at investing in established areas of the city, corridors such as Blue Ridge come up frequently, and other corridors in South Kansas City are being looked at as well. I mean, I've been involved in 107th Street for several years now, and I think that corridor has gotten over $1 million for sidewalk improvements. But they first went through a process similar to this to identify priorities and needs and areas and things of this nature. So I can't promise you that the money's going to come, but I do know that it is important to have a dialogue with the community so that we can all get sort of, I'm going to say, row the boat in the same direction. And that way we can begin to really emphasize the need for to fund the things that are identified by the community. I also, and I will let you know that as a project manager, I'm constantly looking for things that are, I want to say, ripe for implementation. And as, for example, grant projects come around where there's funding available from outside sources to be able to pay for sidewalk improvements, these are the kinds of things that we pursue. I'd much rather have agreement and broad support for a project. It's so much easier to push an initiative forward when there's such broad support for a project, than when we are just basically, throwing things up without any previous study or thought. Grant funding comes available every 2 years. We just went through a round of funding last summer, so the next round of funds will be available next summer. And again, I would want to have these both of these projects to a point where I can begin to pursue and identify funding sources to implement anything that's identified as a priority out of these studies. I do want to emphasize that a lot of these projects are collaborative efforts, not just between the community, but also a collaborative effort between the community, the council members, and the staff that we're both pushing forward projects and trying to get them to a point where they can be funded for implementation. And things such as sidewalks and things that are costly, capital in nature, they require some time, and we definitely need to be able to be sure that projects are to the point what I would call ripe to be able to pursue funding and be competitive at a regional level.
I'm sorry, did you say you were involved in 107th?
Yes.
Did I hear that right? 107th and Blue Ridge?
Yes.
And that went through a similar process to this?
Yes.
When was that?
I'm going to say, well, I did not participate in the study, but I think the study was started in 2014. It might have been completed in 2016.
I don't know any of the neighbors, and certainly not the Southern Communities Coalition was notified about that. That's very interesting.
Maggie, just real quick, Mr. Schumacher left a couple comments in the chat, as well as he has his hand raised, so he might want to elaborate on those as well.
Yes, thank you very much. All right, Mr. Schumacher, would you like to unmute and offer your thoughts or questions?
I was just going to say, I appreciate you all taking at least a bigger look, but obviously sidewalks are a big issue out here. One thing that your engineer did not see, apparently, was if you drive along Blue Ridge and Bannister, you'll see dirt trails where people have been walking because there's no sidewalks. So I think that's pretty evident that there's a need. I've lived out in this area for 58 years, and people have been walking dirt trails for as long as Bannister and Blue Ridge have been 4-lane. So thank you for doing this. Appreciate you all taking a holistic look, but I'm sure we're going to find out that sidewalks are pretty important.
Thank you. I see another comment from Ms. Tolbert in the chat. Mario, that's a great question about sort of how much feedback are we going to need to sort of make a meaningful case for these improvements? Is there a goal we should be shooting for regarding public engagement with this project? That's a fantastic question. I will say before I hand it over to Mario, these engagement sites, the social pinpoint sites, will be up from now until the end of April. So that's sort of the time frame. I know that's not exactly the question you're asking, but just wanted to give everyone a reminder that we will have a little over a month to collect feedback through these sites. And then Mario, I don't know if you want to address sort of from the perspective of how much feedback we're looking to get and how that will inform the next steps.
Well, it's really hard to say. I think obviously we'd want to see a broad representation of the community providing feedback on various issues. More than the quantity of the feedback, it's probably more important to have continued involvement with the project. So, not only today, but maybe 2 years from now with maybe a different project manager or myself, so the continuous involvement is probably is probably more important than the quantity of of responses that we get. And also, again, a broad base of input, right? I mean, obviously, squeaky wheel gets the oil, so the corner of 87th Street gets all the boats in. They're going to get what they want. But I think if you want to look at the entire corridor, then we do want people throughout the corridor to engage and provide input.
Thank you. Okay, I think so. We are at 7:05. I think that it might be a good time. It looks like we don't have any more hand raised, so I think this might be a good time to kind of transition to the Bannister team to give a little bit of background and then kind of get back to the second question, answer, comment session for more discussion. So if that, I guess, Gina, do you have any final thoughts on the social pinpoint site, or can we go ahead and switch over to Bannister Road?
Yes, definitely switch over.
Okay, cool. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. And I know, Mario, I don't know if you want to tee up the Bannister Road corridor study.
Right. So, yeah, thank you, Maggie. Again, we are similar to the Blue Ridge corridor study, which is Blue Ridge is a little more, because it's a shorter corridor, we can go into a little more depth. But Bannister is a longer look. It's 7 miles. It's varies in character from urban to rural to sort of suburban, and so we do want to have an opportunity to look at this corridor again with the sort of a long lens in mind, thinking that over time we're going to be able to make improvements on things that are going to be either immediate needs, short-term need, medium-term needs, or maybe long-term needs. A long-term need might be, say, widening a bridge. We haven't gotten to the point exactly to identify what the priorities are, but it is really a beginning point to try to think long-term about Bannister Road and how it's going to function long-term as South Kansas City continues to develop and maybe not necessarily develop, but maybe reinvent itself. With Cerner and some of the other things that have had an impact in the area. I'm not going to say positive or negative, but regardless, I mean, there's always activity going on, and so we want to get ourselves ready to talk about how Bannister is. How do we manage Bannister long term? Today, it has some characteristics that maybe are working, maybe that are not. But what do we want to do in the future to be able to improve it? So, with that, I want to turn it over to the GBA team led by Dave Bennigan to talk about Bannister. And before I turn it over, though, I do want to get some if there are any questions about my introductory remarks. Very good. So Dave, go ahead and please proceed.
All right, thank you. As Mario said, my name is Dave Menninga, and I'm a traffic engineer and project manager for GBA, and I'll be leading the consultant team for this particular corridor study. Like on the other project, we've also assembled a team that we think is very heavily involved in the area and very knowledgeable about the corridor already. I guess Tim didn't mention, but I will kind of highlight for you that we are also involved, or I am involved on the Blue Ridge project doing the traffic engineering side of that. And similar, SK Design Group, led by Tim, is also going to be involved on our project. So we've got a team of transportation and mostly civil engineers from GBA and SK Design that will actually be doing most of the evaluation on here. But we also have landscape architects and planners and public involvement or engagement specialists from Vireo. And you're going to hear from Travis a little later. She's going to help me walk through most of this presentation. But we're very happy to finally be undertaking this project. We've had some delays over the past year due to the COVID pandemic. And that's been unfortunate, but we're glad to be at this point where we're moving forward and getting the public input that we're looking for tonight. Like Tim did, we're going to be going through a brief discussion of our project and kind of walking through some of the maps that we prepared that kind of highlight the various characteristics. Like Mario said, this is a very a different corridor. And if you will, it's almost two different corridors. There's an urbanized part on the west half, and then it kind of becomes more of a rural, just a 2-lane road kind of winding through some residential estates and subdivisions out towards the east end, towards 350. So I would also like to reiterate, I think Tim said it best, that we're here tonight to listen to everybody's input on the corridor. We don't have any preconceived notions of what the future improvements may need to be, or really we're just trying to prioritize how those things, what they might be, and then how they might be implemented in the future. So as Mario said, our end product is somewhat different. We're presenting more of a report or a prioritization plan, if you will. That's going to allow us to determine some of those items that need immediate attention. There could be some items like we're hearing the sidewalks along Blue Ridge. There could be some things along sections of Bannister that are needed immediately, and everybody's already aware of those. But also we're trying to determine, again, what are the corridor needs, for the eventuality, what's the ultimate need, and then really how much might those things cost. And even though the funding won't be identified, by knowing the magnitude of those costs, we'll be able to at least formulate a better idea for how long it might take to try to implement whatever we come up with for the preferred alternatives. So with that, I think if we go to the next slide, Maggie, that would help us kind of lead into the project website. And if you do go to the capital projects web, you'll see our project is listed up there. I think this slide is a good spot to just then give an overview, if you will, of the project. Like I said, and Mario has reiterated, it's a 7-mile project from 435 on the west over to 350 on the east end. And essentially, we're again splitting this because of the characteristics of the project. We're really kind of considering it to be two projects with a west half and an east half, split generally around the Elm Avenue intersection or the 12 Gates Memorial Gardens. That's kind of the halfway point of the project. As we consider what the city or how the city has defined this corridor to date, in reviewing the KCMO major street plan, there's kind of two different ways. There's two characteristics, if you will, that major streets in the city are defined. And the first one is by through lanes. And so currently, Bannister Road is shown as being generally a 4-lane road, meaning two through lanes in each direction for most of its length. Only at the extreme east and west ends. So it'd be on the west end around 435 near the Cerner Innovations campus, and then also coming up toward the 350 interchange out by Unity Village. Those are identified as actually being even wider 6-lane segments. Obviously, that is kind of the way that it looks in the vicinity of Cerner right now, but out at the east end of the corridor right now, it's only a 4-lane road. So it would take some amount of growth to probably justify the additional widening from 4 to 6 lanes out there. There's also in the major street plan a classification by the street typology. And so Bannister Road, the western end, is currently classified as a thoroughfare. And that's basically from 435 to the James A. Reed intersection. So kind of the western 1.5 miles or 2 miles there. And then from that point to the east, Bannister is classified as a local link, and that'd be from James A. Reed over to 350. So the difference between those, a local link really serves as a connector from neighborhoods and to allow residents to get out onto the roadway and then traverse the corridor to get to other services and points of interest. And so that's really intended as a local link to just carry moderate levels of traffic and basically be very compatible with bike and pedestrian users. We're really intending that to be a very multimodal focused corridor. The thoroughfare, the western part of this corridor, it already serves some of the commercial areas like Cerner and the shopping centers in the area of Bannister and Blue Ridge. And so really it has a different function in that it's trying to, it is more vehicular focused, and it is trying to serve through or destination traffic that's trying to get across town. So again, that all goes to say that we kind of do have two different types of corridors here that we're studying. and they kind of meet up at James A. Reed or near the cemetery, like I mentioned. Finally, the last general comment I want to make about the corridor is just the regarding its classification on the Bike KC master plan. And this entire corridor length is currently designated as a major separation. And that means we're going to have one form or another of a bike lane, a shared use path, on road or on the street bike lanes. Those are all options, but they want to have a clearly identified facility for bike users of this corridor. So with that, Maggie, I think it's a good time to switch over to Travis and let her share the screen, and we'll go from the actual website.
Let me see. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, there it is. So if you scroll to the top, that will be the exact same thing that we were just looking at, just to orient people that that we are seeing the same thing. Again, this is on the Capital Projects website, and you'll see as we scroll down, we've got the same brief description that many of you already saw in the flyers that were distributed, and it's just repeated here. And so what we're going to do, similar to Tim, is walk through the corridor. Our team has prepared segment maps, and again, because it's 7 miles long, we actually have 4 different pieces, and we're going to try to go through those in pretty short order because I'd like to leave as much time as possible for some of the Q&A and input. So let's look at segments A and B.
If you click, all of the links on these web pages, you all are highlighted in red, anything that's clickable. So if I click segment A and B, I've already got it open. This is what it would look like.
Right, and so we've got that maximized as much as we can. This is the first segment that, to orient everybody, these will always be, the left side will be west and we'll be moving eastward to the right. So north is up on all of our exhibits. This is segment A, which again highlights from I-435 on the west over to James A. Reed intersection on the east. And so this is the most heavily urbanized section of the Bannister Road corridor. Again, at the west end, we've got the 6 lanes near the Cerner, divided 6 lane, I should say, with turn lanes in front of the Cerner Innovations campus. I kind of want to just maybe on this first slide highlight the way that we've set these up so that you'll see the similarities throughout. If you look in the middle of the roads, we've got the number of lanes clearly identified, and we've got those color coded. So you can see this segment actually goes from 6 lanes into a 4-lane section. And I think a lot of that has to do with the railroad bridge and needing to get across that railroad corridor. And then it widens out to actually a 5-lane section identified. It's 4 lanes plus a center turn lane. So I'm calling that 5 lanes. As we think about how much traffic this corridor or this segment of the corridor carries, obviously there's a lot more activity on the western end, and current volumes pre-pandemic, based on the information the city provided to us, is something in the low to mid 20,000 vehicles per day. I mean, that's justification pretty easily identified as far as needing those 6 lanes. It tends to drop, and really it's pretty much a constant along the entire corridor, but especially this segment, it tends to drop as we go from west to east. And so by the time you get over to James A. Reed, we're probably in the 13 to 15,000 vehicles per day. This segment of the corridor, and actually most of the corridor, I think until the View High Drive intersection, is posted at 40 miles an hour, and that's the same as what you heard on Blue Ridge Boulevard as well. So we've also got little call-out circles, if you can see those, and I realize you might all have to, have time to get on the website and be able to zoom in and see these better than what we can show you tonight. But what you'll see is similar to the other project, we're showing characteristics and kind of, localized issues that might be shown at certain locations. That's really what we're trying to call out. Other points of interest like churches and schools, daycare centers, parks are all shown on here. And then I'd like to call your attention kind of top and bottom as you go along the corridor. We try to tell you what the characteristics of the adjacent neighborhoods are. And so we can kind of do that here where we've got the Cerner campus on the north side is a very vibrant thing, and they're definitely expanding over there. And then we've got the Bannister Square Shopping Center on the south side of the corridor. In the middle of this segment, it becomes a little more undeveloped, or there's room for potential future development there. And then you kind of get into the Blue Ridge Shopping District area around that signalized intersection before transitioning more into suburban neighborhoods that are kind of more prevalent as you go towards James A. Reed. So, Travis, is there anything I'm missing as far as what Vireo has assembled on these maps?
No.
Okay.
You're doing fine.
All right. With that said, we'll scroll down and we will take a look at segment B. And this is getting, it really does cover the western half of the project. You can see 12 Gates Memorial Gardens shows up there adjacent to Elm Avenue. So that's kind of our delineation between the western and the eastern halves of this project. So this is a more suburban neighborhood, and then actually as it transitions at about Elm Avenue or just a little west of there, it actually transitions into more rural residential. And that's pretty consistent that you can see through here. Those are basically the two types of land uses that we have. Again, we do have signalized intersections at James A. Reed and at Raytown, and everything else would just be, side street stop sign controls and things like that. So again, that's where we've got the split showing. This is generally east of James A. Reed. It narrows down pretty quickly to just a 2-lane road. And for this segment of the corridor, I would estimate that we're really seeing somewhere between 10 and 15,000 in the volumes, and the 15,000 is really closer to the James A. Reed intersection or through the Raytown intersection, where there are some additional turn lanes and things to handle that and provide that capacity. So I think we're ready to go back, Travis, and look at segments C and D, excuse me. So this one starts at Olmsted Road. So this is actually a little bit past the halfway point of our corridor, and it goes over to Noland Road on the eastern end. So we get across the river and we kind of get over there to Noland Road or Route V. Again, this is a 40-mile-an-hour corridor only at the western end of this segment. When we get to the View High Drive intersection, right there in the vicinity of Stubbs Road is where it transitions to a 45-mile-an-hour posted speed limit. Traffic volumes on this corridor, this segment of the corridor, are a little lower, generally between 4,000 and 6,000 vehicles per day. And you can kind of see there when we get to Harrison, this is really the first time that we kind of deviate from the east-west, tangential roadway that's just following the section lines. So this is where we start to really experience some of the horizontal curvature as we drop towards the river, as well as vertical profiles, obviously, falling to the elevation of the river and making that crossing. If we can go to segment D, we'll just wrap up here real quick. Again, this continues to be a 2-lane segment as we go east of Noland, and then in the vicinity of Hawker Street there and the Wedgwood Point subdivision, that's where the 4-lane road is currently, or there's some widening there to a 4-lane road. Volumes on that little piece of road, and I think it's really because of access from those neighborhoods to and from 350, those volumes increased to 8,000 to 9,000 vehicles per day. And again, this entire segment's at 45 miles an hour. So I kind of think this is one of the, based on what we've seen from our review of some of the travel demand modeling available from the Mid-American Regional Council, this is probably, in my mind, one of the areas that may need some immediate attention just because it's carrying a little bit higher volumes. And I'm also interested in comments that might come out tonight about the close spacing of several of those intersections, Hawker and Leslie, and also Pryor Road, which is the 350 outer road in MoDOT's jurisdiction there. So I think that's probably enough on the maps. If we go back to the project website and continue to scroll down, I think you'll see that we also talk about what our project is, and we start getting into the public engagement side. And I'm now going to turn it over to Travis because we've already, created a lot of our social pinpoint interactive site, and I want her to be able to kind of show you the look and feel of ours is slightly different, but I think you're going to see that it's you're going to interact with it in generally the same way. So take it away, Travis.
Thanks, Dave. Our social pinpoint site works the same. So if you're on the project website, and I put it in the chat, which is www.tinyurl.com /KCMO Bannister, you'll end up at this project page. And again, anything that's clickable is in red. So you can click the interactive social pinpoint site link, which I've already done. When you come to that page, it looks like this. There's the interactive map that we have, which I'll show you in a bit. The project website is there. The overview of what we're talking about is there. But the two key areas that you're going to want to look at are the interactive map and the survey. What I'm going to do is start with the interactive map. You just click that button. I've already got it open. Once you do that, you'll come into a map that looks like this. We do have a broader study area than Blue Ridge. And so the study area is outlined in white. Here, we're using an aerial map. And essentially what we're wanting to do is add markers. And so you click the add marker button. Like the other project, we have lots of categories of markers that you could add, from sidewalks to number of lanes to reducing speed to turning movements to medians to crosswalks and any other thing that comes to your mind. What I want to do, since I want to add a marker actually, I'm going to add a sidewalk marker. So to do that, I click the add and I see that a marker is placed. But I need to basically click and drag my mouse to where I want that to go. And I'm zooming in. There's two ways to zoom in. Gina showed you that there's a plus and minus sign on the sides of your map in the top right corner that allow you to zoom in, zoom out. If you use a mouse that has a scroll wheel on it, you can also zoom in and out with that. And that's typically what I'm doing right now. So I'm going to zoom in. And I know that there are not sidewalks right here on the north side of Bannister. So I want to zoom in. I want to place my marker. And I want to say I need sidewalks. I'm going to agree to the terms. If I wanted to add a picture, I could do that. Thank you for commenting. So our site has been up since the flyer was mailed out to everyone. And so what's happened is people have been using it and they've been adding comments. What Social Pinpoint is doing is giving you a living legend every time a comment type has been added. And so that legend appears in the bottom right of your map. So we've had some comments about sidewalks and not just the one that I've added. Some comments about medians, left turn, safety issue, etc. So I'm going to click on this one, which is a safety issue. And here's a comment that someone has already left. And then you can add to that conversation by clicking start a discussion. You can share on social media and so on. And so here are some of the comments. And I saw on here, yeah, there are some comments about a median over here by the Phillips 66. There's different ways, different types of comments that you can add, and we've already started doing that. Something else that you want to do on this site is not just do the interactive map, you want to do the survey. And so you're going to click the link to the survey, which is take the survey, and it will immediately pop up. We have about a half dozen questions in it. The first one is about safety or convenience. It's a multiple choice question. All you have to do is select your response. You scroll down. I'm using my scroll wheel, but there's also a scrolling bar on the right. We're asking a question about sidewalks. What's your preference? Now, I know we've heard comment on Blue Ridge about where the sidewalk should be. We haven't gotten that comment, at least that we are aware of, for Bannister. So we're showing some pictures of what it could look like. Sidewalk on both sides. Shared use path. So you got sidewalk on one side, basically. Shared use path means that it's more than just a place for people to walk. They might also bike on that. And so it might be more of a trail. We've shown you some pictures. And then we're asking what's your preference. So you have your option there and you click what you would like. We're also doing the same thing for bicycle facilities because of the major street plan and because of the bicycle master plan and its identification of Bannister Road being for future bicycle facilities. So we've asked question number 3, which is, do you prefer on-road bicycle facilities or not? If you say no, no answer options, no additional pictures will show up. However, if you say yes, then that will take you to another question that shows different ways of accomplishing that. We're really interested in knowing, do you have a preference for any of these? We've got a one-way path where you have bicycles being provided on street with a barrier between them and the cars, and they're going in one direction instead of two. Here's that where they can go in both directions on one side of the street with a barrier between the route and the vehicle, the cars where they're driving. Here's one that you see a lot in Kansas City where you see a standard bike lane that's painted. It's next to the sidewalk. So there are some options there. Just want to get a feel for what you all think about that. Also, the number of driving lanes, like what should that look like? What should that feel like? We have a question about that. And so we're showing some pictures of what some options could be. We've got a 4-lane road where you have 2 lanes in each direction. You've got the gold line that separates that. In this case, you've got the sidewalk on the side. There's another option. You know, you could have a median in between the 2 lanes. Put some landscaping in there. This one is what's already in other parts of the city where you have 3 lanes, but the center lane's a turn lane and you can go, you know, left or take a left turn from that center turn lane, depending on which direction you're going. Here's another one. This is another 3-lane road, but it has bicycle facilities on the side and it's got sidewalks. So we show you some images and then ask for your thoughts on that. We also would love to know how you would describe yourself. So we have an idea of whether or not we have commuters, cyclists, property owners, residents, business owners commenting. And then we want to be sure that we capture any other thoughts, concerns, issues that you have. And so that's among our last couple of questions. We'd love to have your email address also. Once you've done all of that, click the agree to terms and submit, and your survey will be received by us. Last thing I will share with you is that, like the other project, we're taking comments until April 30th. All the maps that Dave showed you are on our project webpage, but they're also on this social pinpoint site. They're just at the bottom, and you can scroll down through those. You can let us know if you need any help, contact us, and share on social. So with that, I'm trying to be fast. It's 7:31. And I know that there are probably questions and there could be safety concerns, other ideas, other improvements that you all are interested in talking to us about, and we want to hear that. So what I'm going to do maybe is I might stop sharing my screen.
Yeah, let's go back to Maggie's slides. We have a couple, you know, seed comment slides there that we'll just walk through real quick. There they are. So like Travis was just saying, you know, there's probably some concerns that you all have. There's some that we have already thought of, and due to our involvement in other projects along the corridor, like Cerner involves both SK Design and us. GBA is also involved in the Paragon Star project, which is near I-470 and View High. And so we've had the opportunity to hear some comments about potential vehicle speeding. You know, Mario mentioned traffic calming might be some options that we would want to consider. Traffic volumes, we know there's a lot of variability in the volumes. We think there's some issues potentially with cut-through traffic whenever there's either construction or incidents on I-470. We think Bannister Road becomes an outlet for some of those folks. Intersection operations and safety, we'd just like to you know, hear what you think about the way that certain intersections are currently functioning, if you feel like there's a need for improvements. Obviously, the lack of multimodal facilities is pretty important given the fact that the corridor is identified on the bike plan. And we also realize on the eastern end of the corridor with all the horizontal and vertical alignment and profile changes, you know, there may be intersections that people are having a hard time turning out onto the corridor. They have some sight distance concerns. Next slide, Maggie. So we've got some ideas that we want to consider. Obviously, with some of the volumes and things that we are talking about, you know, we think as part of our project, it's prudent for us to determine whether the need for a 4-lane road is really justified in all segments for the future. Obviously, Travis and the survey goes a long ways towards identifying people's preferences for multimodal facilities. And at the intersections, we think there's different ideas that we could use to improve the corridor, or that they might be needed in the future if traffic growth is exhibited. Maybe some of those intersections need to have either roundabouts or traffic signals. And then to address any sight distance issues or something that might come up, especially from a vertical standpoint, there might be pieces of the road that need to be raised, or we need to make some adjustments to the profile. So I think that's the level of ideas and comments that we're looking for tonight. So with that, I think we're ready to enter in the Q&A period moderated by Maggie.
Thank you, Dave and Travis. I do see that John is chiming in into the chat about traffic counts and how variable it is along the corridor. And Dave, you mentioned that Bannister near Hillcrest has 20,000 vehicles a day and needs, warrants a lot of lanes. On the other side, it only warrants, 2 lanes. So John is just wondering if you can, Dave, speak to, the need for that many lanes. How do we go about making an improvement that's consistent and includes safety? He's worried about the need for 6 lanes, creating more barriers and more speed. So Dave, don't know if you can address the John's questions and comments about traffic counts.
I think I can. I mean, again, it's a very fluid situation. It's very high with all of the level of activity and the level of traffic demand with the shopping areas and Cerner and all those things on the western end. And the roadway, it's already configured that way. I guess as I look at the two halves of the project, if you will, I feel like the western half from 435 to James A. Reed at least is urbanized the way that, maybe it actually had that demand or had more demand in the past when the mall was there and some other things, but certainly Cerner and redevelopment is bringing some of that demand back in the current situation. And so I really look at the western half of our project as being maybe more similar to Blue Ridge, where we're looking for deficiencies like missing sidewalks, and maybe we've got some utility situations or things that are causing issues that need to be addressed today. But I don't think we're looking at a wholesale change of the character of that neighborhood or the street as it goes through that neighborhood. I think when we get east of James A. Reed, the volumes fall to a level where the possibility at least exists where even though the major street plan calls out 4 lanes, it might be more prudent for us to use the existing right-of-way or to minimize the amount of additional right-of-way that is needed, to think about using different lanes or reduced lanes with a road diet type approach, or possibly just reallocating. I mean, really what it allows us to do is accommodate sidewalks and trails in the right-of-way that's available without needing to acquire more. And so it becomes a more cost-effective project that way. It would be generally very expensive, in my opinion, to really accommodate a 4-lane road for the entire length of project, especially east of Raytown, where you do have a lot of horizontal and vertical changes, and that just might be very expensive. Like Mario mentioned, possible widening of the bridge across the Little Blue River would be, that'd be a sizable expense. And when you have those kinds of expenses, then it becomes much more more expensive and a longer timeline to accommodate those things. So to answer the question generally, yes, I mean, we're definitely going to try to right size our answers, our solutions to the traffic volumes and the safety concerns. I mean, really being context sensitive in our design is the right way to do that. So I, again, just want to illustrate to everybody that we don't have any preconceived notions and we're open to the ideas, and our designs will be taken where the facts lead us, essentially.
Thank you, Dave. John, I did see that your hand raised kind of while Dave was talking. So do you want to chime in, and then we'll get to Rihanna and Carrie after that?
No, thanks for that clarification, because it sounded like you were saying that we needed to widen Bannister to 6 lanes up to Blue Ridge, which I think we don't need to do. Bannister used to carry more traffic, as you say, when the mall was there. And to be honest, making another concrete, basically airport runway further just cuts the neighborhood in half.
No, John, I would add that I think the limits of the 6 lane, and I think it's illustrated in the master street plan as well. Based on our studies of the Cerner site, it really is from 435 to Hillcrest. And so it's, it's not additional widening to 6 lanes. It really is just the section that already exists.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, the street plan does show some widening out at 350 though, and that I think would need some proof. I'm not sure I'm seeing that from the modeling that I've seen from Mark, whether that demand will be there or not.
Thank you. Rihanna, do you want to offer your comment or question? I think you're muted.
Okay, there we go.
Yep.
I have a couple comments. I'm the neighborhood president of the Unity Ridge Neighborhood Association. I've been very active in this area for about 10 years, and I have some issues. If you go back to that map, and especially in my area, I'm talking about the east side, what you call the east side of Bannister Road. So if you go back to the map, you'll see that it is 4-lane from 350 to the subdivisions of Walnut Woods and Wedgewood Point. Now, why would that be 4-lane and then all the rest of it is 2-lane till you get to Raytown Road? Well, it's 4-lane there because the developers were asked and paid for the widening of the road. Our neighborhood is a one-way, or excuse me, is a dead-end street, and it's Pryor Road that comes up to Bannister. A number of years ago, we asked for PIAC money because there are now about 500 units of multifamily living right there at that intersection. And we asked for money to provide us a signal to be able to get out of our neighborhood with this increased population. We were granted the money for the PIAC signal, and then Public Works said, no, we don't own that land. We cannot use this money to create a traffic control feature here because it's actually MoDOT's land. That took 2 or 3 years for our neighborhood to find out about that. In my estimation, that's ridiculous. So we're back to square one because the city and MoDOT both think that we don't have enough traffic up here. So the comment is, once we get going with Pryor Road, this is also a multi-jurisdictional problem here because we've got Lee Summit right across the road on the south side of Bannister. There's a little bit of Kansas City property there, but then it turns into Lee Summit. Pryor Road is a horrible road that's falling into, into God knows what caves or whatever underneath of it, goes up to 470. And there's a plan for a lot of multifamily housing in that area. So I have a lot of concerns about traffic control. Then if we leave the neighborhood, we're going east. So we're at the Wedgewood Point, Walnut Woods neighborhood. Then we go across the bridge, it's 2-lane there. We go up to the top of the hill to View High. And in the future, we're going to have a soccer park, movie theaters, multifamily housing, all at View High and Bannister going down to 470. These neighborhoods around here are very upset with the fact that the developer Paragon Star, which I guess GBA is a consultant for, is not willing to do any of the road improvements and pay for them. But we all know that people will be using Bannister Road. They'll get off at 350 and they'll use Bannister Road to go through the back way to this soccer park and all these other commercial businesses that will be there. And I'm hearing conversation here that says we don't even need 4 lanes from Raytown Road all the way to like the Walnut Woods and Wedgewood Point subdivision. So I don't think this is right, and I'm not sure what's going on, but we're going to see more and more and more housing and development out here on the southeast corner of Kansas City, Missouri, because of Lee Summit and because the housing on Kansas City. So I just want you to know what my feelings are. And I think that there are a lot of neighborhood people that are not attending this meeting tonight that feel the same way.
So,
Thank you,
Brianna,
Rhianna.
just to summarize what so that I can understand what you've said, and I want to make sure that your comments are going to get reflected. And as we look into the corridor, what you're seeing is basically a lot of future development in the horizon that is going to put pressure on the existing infrastructure on Bannister between Raytown and 350. Is that basically okay?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. I mean, and that's a fair point. And I think as we begin to look at existing and maybe future traffic protections, that will bear out. So, and yeah, we'll thank you for that.
And additionally, on the traffic protection, we already know we need. We got PIAC funding to do that signal, and then we were son that no, I'm sorry, we can't put that signal in now because it's not Kansas City.
Yeah, so I think that's going to be something that we will investigate a little bit on the side, and we'll try to provide some answers or some ideas of what happened there and what the facts are.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Director Shaw, I saw that you raised your hand if you want to chime in real quick.
Yeah, I was just gonna speak to the traffic signal at Bannister prior. There was a traffic study that was done, and it was determined that there currently isn't enough traffic there for that light, and MoDOT rejected us putting the light there. I mean, we were anticipating that we would pay for the light if they allow us to put it there. We pay for it since but they rejected that. So that's kind of where we are with that. But I don't disagree with your assertion that once this soccer complex and all that is built, there's traffic is going to significantly increase. I would I would be concerned also about 98th Street and Northfleet, because that would come up right behind that soccer complex that they're talking about building over in that area. So, and View High, if we're going to talk about that issue, which I know is not part of this scope, but those are going to be problematic.
I could probably offer a little bit of clarification on that, having been involved with Paragon Star. And most of that traffic work was because the majority of that development actually lies within Lee Summit. They pretty much ran the process, but KC Mo did have the opportunity to review everything that was done from traffic studies and those kinds of things, and continues to be involved on all the development because there are portions of it that are within the city of KC Mo. There are always assumptions in those kinds of studies. The assumption is that about 10% of that development traffic would use View High to come up to the Bannister corridor. So that's a number. We have to start with something. But the developer, the TDD that's been formed in association with that development, is going to be paying for the conversion of the I-470 and View High interchange into a diverging diamond, which is going to drastically increase. Well, first, it's going to signalize those ramps, but it's also going to provide an interchange type that's going to have the capacity to serve the majority of the traffic associated with the soccer complex. And so that's why that type of assumption was made. Now, certainly people will choose the routes that they will choose. Again, we have to estimate the future condition. I don't believe at this moment that there are any connections via 98th and Northfleet, unless it is being made in an emergency situation only with crash gates and things for fire engine access and those kinds of things to come into the development from the northeast corner. So hopefully that answers at least a couple of those points that were raised.
Thank you. Carrie P., your hand is up and you are next.
Yeah, I've had to share some of the same concerns as Rhianna on Bannister Road regarding the future development, particularly from View High going east to Pryor. And I just see with a lot of, they're talking about loss, they're talking about retail there also. Unless there's going to be a second exit going up, that's not going to be View High Drive. There's going to be a lot of traffic issues on Bannister as well, because I see people using that as a bypass to avoid the highway if something happens on 470. And I know you talked about as far as from Bannister, from James A. Reed to Raytown Road, we had submitted PIAC requests for at least looking at expand or make at least another lane on that road to accommodate the extra traffic as well. No, we not made necessarily 4-lane, but is there a possibility of a turning lane in that section of road?
Yes, I would
road?
clarify based on what we've seen, looking at the future volumes. I guess maybe I've mischaracterized that, or people are misunderstanding that we're not saying no widening is needed. We're only saying, is it more prudent for it to be a 3-lane road instead of a 4-lane road or something like that? I think we'll be analyzing several different alternatives because they will have different costs. They will have different right-of-way impacts. We'll be able to provide different levels of multimodal, facilities, whether they're on the road or they need to be, if people's preferences are for them to be behind the curb, things like that will all factor in, and it will affect the choices and the preferences of the alternatives that we look at. So I don't want to say that we're, I guess I wouldn't want people to only think that the road will stay the way it is. I mean, we're here to try to identify what it needs to look like in the future. And that's just, again, it's not a preconceived notion. It's just that we're willing to look at a variety of factors, and it might lead us to a 3-lane or a 4-lane or something else. We don't know yet. Everything is on the table, in my opinion.
If in fact it is widened, I would assume it would have sidewalk. It would become a complete street and have sidewalks on both sides of the street as well. Does that mean basically they have to redo the street lights they just put in? They had just upgraded Bannister from James A. Reed to at least Nolan Road to LED street lights. Mm-hmm. And they're currently in the process of updating the gas line as well. So it just seems like, we knew about this Bannister project a couple of years ago. Why did they upgrade the street lights now if there was a possibility of them having to rip them back out, move them again?
Kerry, when we do a street widening project, I mean, everything gets, everything from fire hydrants, street lights, gas meters. There's a lot of utility involved, relocation involved in the grand scheme of things. What we're doing right now is probably just changing the luminaires, from a standard high pressure sodium to a LED. When we come back with a street project, we would probably replace the entire system and meter it. So, I mean, and again, it's an issue of timing. I mean, a widening of a roadway could take 6 to 7 years to do. And I'm not sure that maybe the public would be willing to wait that long to upgrade the streetlights. So it may seem like, perhaps we're not being responsible with the money, but the reality is we kind of have to we evaluate what we can do today versus what we need to do in the future, and sometimes we just have to do some things to address today's concerns.
Carrie, did you have anything else to add?
No, that's about it at this time.
Okay, thank you. Teresa, we see your hand up.
Yes, I apologize. I have not heard anything mentioned about the environment. At what point would someone come on to help us understand the impact that might have and suggest other things that could be done that would not impact the environment quite as much?
Wow. Well, that's a stumper. That's a great
question.
Well, I will, a lot of these projects, we always have some some level of environmental review that depending on what's there. For example, threatened and endangered species, historic preservation type things. There's a very comprehensive set of elements that we look at when we're doing a roadway widening, which I think in a corridor such as this would probably apply federal funds. A lot of the federal standards for environmental review would apply. So I think at the time that when we begin to talk about more discrete projects, I think that environmental review piece will come into a better. It become more evident.
I only ask because it seems as though Kansas City likes to put down more pavement to help commuters get through our city a little bit faster, and probably with wider streets that would also entail more commuters coming through at a faster rate. And the city also doesn't really seem to mind to mow down years old trees in order to do that. So just asking.
Yeah, I really don't have a good answer for you. Other than to say that I think when we look at management of a transportation network, for one, we're trying to look at multimodality, which means, trying to get buses or bikes or pedestrians to use the street so that we're not so dependent on cars. But the other element too is that, if we do not do a good job in managing our transportation network, then we begin to promote congestion and idling and additional, CO2 emissions that if we have a good and efficient transportation network, maybe we can better mitigate. But I'll be honest with you. Your questions are really tough to answer because you're right. We're always looking at situations with the eye of, providing capacity. And maybe I can tell you this is that, maybe the practice in prior years had been to maximize capacity. I think our current practice is more along the lines of trying to right-size our capacity. And that's why Dave, has brought up some ideas of maybe not building out a 4-lane corridor and maybe going to a 3-lane corridor, because we know that, from prior experience that when we build out a 4-lane corridor becomes congested, it essentially functions the same way as a 3-lane corridor. So why build a 4-lane corridor if we're going to end up with 3-lane capacity anyway? So those are the kinds of things that maybe we're going to incorporate into our thinking with the study, is to say, well, how do we right size our infrastructure so they can serve us long term for the needs that we have today, but also for what comes up in the future.
Okay, I would also advocate for as many roundabouts and as few stoplights as possible.
Thank you for that.
Yep, thank you.
So I'm going to switch gears for us. We have about 3 minutes left until our time, and if we go over a couple minutes, that's okay too. Travis did put it. Sorry, go ahead.
Maggie, there is one question in the chat that I don't think we got to. It was Ms. Tolbert's question about the west side of the project. She was asking how much of the recent street construction at Hillcrest and Bannister is being crafted around the needs of the Cerner employees versus the existing properties and traffic of residents. So I wanted to at least.
Yes, thank you very much. I missed that one. Dave or Mario, do you have any insight you can provide to Ms. Tolbert's question?
I would actually defer to Sasan from SK is actually on this call, and he actually kind of led our efforts with Cerner, and he might be able to answer that question the best regarding Hillcrest.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Sasan Mahobian with SK Design Group, and let me try to show my face too. Cerner is a big campus. It is going to house about 16,000 people. It is a city in itself. It's going to generate a lot of traffic, and it's mainly going to be off of Bannister and 435 to Hillcrest. the traffic models that were used for the projected traffic at the ultimate build out of the campus also included ultimate build out of the other areas around the campus. And those traffic models showed the required number of lanes on Bannister Road. And the thoughts were given to whether or not we want to just provide the necessary lanes for the current traffic. Not when I say current traffic is pre-pandemic. Current traffic is really low. Campus is closed. When the campus opens, there will be more traffic. But based on the current traffic, if you were just to improve the roadway for current traffic volumes, you wouldn't need all the lanes that we have. But do we improve the roadway for current traffic and then go in and improve the roadway for multi-lanes, for 6 lanes with turn lanes when we have a lot of traffic on the roadway? So those things were considered, and the owner decided that the best option would be to improve the roadway for the ultimate condition at this point, so that we don't impact the traffic when we have majority of the traffic going through that corridor.
Gotcha. And this is Catherine Tolbert, actually going by audio now. I appreciate that explanation. I'm not trying to stir the pot on Cerner stuff. It's more of, as we do add our comments to the surveys and various tools that you guys have shown, just keeping a realistic idea of, what can we hope to actually contribute to that versus what is being predetermined privately and by the city. It's just what can we offer to that area under the assumption that a lot of things are going on that we may not know about. Like I had no idea about all that, but I appreciate you explaining it.
And I think that's going to attract a lot of development to that area. It is going to improve that area significantly. Right now we have a Taco Bell going in, a Hampton Inn going in. There's going to be a Harvest Bank at the corner of at the corner of Drury and Bannister. There's going to be more development that is going to be attracted to this area, and it will generate more income for the city, and it is going to be, providing funds for improving the rest of Bannister Road, hopefully.
Thank you for that additional input and help answering that comment. Ms. Tolbert, did you have anything else to add there?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So we, team, I guess we've got people raising their hands. It is 8:01. We do have a couple more things to get through. Just want to maybe see if we want to keep it open for comments or switch gears. What does the team think here? Mario, do you have thoughts on?
I think let's just go ahead and keep taking a couple more of these questions. But then again, remind folks that use the tools that we've shown to provide input, but I don't want to cut off any kind of discussion that we're having right now. So let's go ahead and take a couple more. I think we got 3 hands up still. So let's take those and then maybe try to wrap it up by about 10 after 8.
Okay. All right. So Teresa, it looks like you have your hand up again.
Yes. First, I appreciate that you did what the owner wanted you to do as far as Bannister Road goes. That's how the community lost Hillcrest Road. But is Cerner's front door not on 87th Street? That's where they're telling everybody to go in. There's these big signs on Bannister saying to use the 87th Street.
At this point, they are, but we've only built 2 sets of towers on campus at this point, which house approximately 3,500 people each. So that's 7,000 people that we anticipate on the east side of Hillcrest Road in the buildings that have been built now. But there's going to be 3 more sets of towers on the west side of Hillcrest Road to bring the total volume to 16,000 people. Those 16,000 people will come from both directions. All of them cannot come from the north end. Right now, it was to reduce the traffic volumes on Bannister Road to direct them to 87th Street to come down on that side.
Thank you for that. Looks like John, the Schumachers, if you would like to go ahead and offer your comment or question.
Yeah, thank you. Regarding Bannister Road, at one time, we had Metro Green, we had a trail that was going to connect all the way over. We've got a bridge over 71 Highway to significant investment. We've got a bridge, pedestrian bridge over 435 and another significant investment. And we just want to make sure that trail gets built. It's disappeared. And I know Cerner was going to build that trail at one point, but I think the city needs to be thinking about that in terms of connectivity while we're doing sidewalks up in Blue Ridge. And I would reiterate what Teresa said. I think the biggest loss for South Kansas City was we lost connectivity between 87th Street and Bannister Road. And I think the city really needs to think pretty hard about that. That is a tremendous impediment to development. And we've got an Arvis Bank going in. That's only because they're moving from one location. So right now, what we have is a Taco Bell. I hope we get more than that.
I certainly hope so too. And the connectivity of the trail was very important to us. We extended it all the way to the corner of Hillcrest and Bannister Road. We worked with Lou Austin on acquiring additional right-of-way that was needed to put it along Hillcrest and along 93rd Street. But we weren't getting anywhere from property owners participating in the right-of-way acquisition. So that was dropped. Unfortunately, Lou Austin passed away, and we need somebody to take the torch and get the neighborhoods to agree to add a trail. We've talked even to Cerner about putting in trails through the retail area, and it all depends on what kind of development will occur through there. We don't know who would be interested in building in the retail component of the campus at this point.
Thank you for that comment. Yeah, I know Lou passed away. He was my brother. So.
Oh, great guy. I miss him. Yeah, he's a great guy. I walked the road with him several times. The insight that he gave and the history that he had, it is truly missed.
Well, hopefully we can get that built.
I hope so, sir. And I will work with you. If you would like to call me and talk to me about it, I will work with you to get your desires in front of the owner and try to accomplish what you and I both think is important to this corridor.
Okay, this is Mario. Maggie had to hop off, so I'm going to take over her facilitation duties. I think we're just about to the end of the meeting, though. So, Carrie, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to share Mr. Schumacher's sentiments about the trail and connectivity, as well as the connectivity of Hillcrest from 87th Street to Bannister Road. That has been a huge loss for our area. I also wanted to ask regarding Cerner. When's the last time you had a conversation with Cerner? Or was it before or after the pandemic? Because I want to make sure that we don't build all this infrastructure for Cerner, and then all of a sudden, everybody's working from home now. We're not going to build these office buildings.
I almost talk to Cerner on a daily basis.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the infrastructure that is being built over there is probably being paid for largely by Cerner. Although, there's a lot of other things going on with the financing of those projects, but all right, any other comments? I think past our time, and I think I want to be respectful to our attendees and this and our consultant teams. I think Maggie, I think our next steps, again, we are going to be continuing to gather data and information. We definitely encourage you to share our websites and social pinpoint information with your neighborhoods, and with your residents and anybody else in the corridor who might have an interest in these projects. Our intent is to collect this information, analyze it, and come back to you with some initial thoughts about both projects. Maybe not in a joint setting the next time, maybe individually. But I think it's just this was a good starting point. I think all of us have been anxious to try to get these projects going. And the pandemic, like I said, got in the way of us. But now here we are, and I'm hoping to get conclusion on these projects over the next several months. I don't know if Mr. Shaw or Councilwoman Park Shaw wanted to add anything else.
Yeah, I'll just thank everybody for your time tonight. And if you have any additional comments or thoughts, please feel free to reach out to my office as well. And thank you to the team. I can tell, you guys put a lot of thought and effort into this, and I appreciate that. And I will say, I was listening. Angela and I were taking notes from the neighbors. I will talk with Councilman Barnes and find out what information I can about the priority on the Blue Ridge piece, and we will try to get that information out to you guys. Or we'll probably actually discuss it in our 5th District meeting, the April 5th District meeting. So if you guys tune in there, we will just try to provide some insight in that meeting. And if you're not able to attend that, you can reach out to my office offline, and we can inform you from there. Otherwise, thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate you guys hanging in there after hours as well.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Shaw, any of the final comments? Oh, I think that was that. All right, everybody. Thank you. I think we are adjourned for the night, and we'll reconvene at a future date, probably sometime around late May, early June. So thank you all, and have a good evening.
Thank you.